Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes. Nakshanti no me nimisho lady heti Yeshamaham priya atma sutascha Sakha guru surido deva mishtam Nakarhi chinmat parashanta rupe Nakshanti no me nimisho lady heti Yeshamaham priya atma sutascha Sakha guru surido deva mishtam Ladies. Na, not, Karhichit, ever, Matpara, my devotees, Shantarupe, O Mother, Nakshanti, will lose, no, not, me, my, Animisha, time, Ledhi, destroys, Heti, weapon, Yesham, of whom, Aham, I, Priya, dear, Atma, self, Sutta, son, Cha, and, Sakha, friend, Guru, preceptor, Surida, benefactor, Devam, deity, Ishtam, chosen. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation. The Lord continued, my dear mother, devotees who receive such transcendental opulences are never bereft of them. Neither weapons nor the change of time can destroy such opulences, because the devotees accept me as their friend, their relative, their son, preceptor, benefactor, and the supreme deity, they cannot be derived of their possessions at any time. Purport. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that one may elevate himself to the higher planetary systems, even up to Brahma Loka, by dint of pious activities. But when the effects of such pious activities are finished, one again comes back to this earth to begin a new life of activities. Thus, even though one is promoted to the higher planetary system for enjoyment and a long duration of life, still that is not a permanent settlement. But as far as the devotees are concerned, their assets, the achievement of devotional service and the consequent opulence of Vaikuntha, even on this planet, are never destroyed. In this verse, Kapila Dev addresses his mother as Shanta Rupa, indicating that the opulences of devotees are fixed, because devotees are eternally fixed in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, which is called Shanta Rupa, because it is in the mode of pure goodness, undisturbed by the modes of passion and ignorance. Once one is fixed in the devotional service of the Lord, his position of transcendental service cannot be destroyed, and the pleasure and service simply increase unlimitedly. For the devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there is no influence of time. In the material world, the influence of time destroys everything. But in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there is no influence of time or of the demigods, because there are no demigods in the Vaikuntha planets. Here, our activities are controlled by different demigods. Even if we move our hand and leg, the action is controlled by the demigods. But in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there is no influence of the demigods or of time. Therefore, there is no question of destruction. When the time element is present, there is certainty of destruction. But when there is no time element, past, present, or future, then everything is eternal. Therefore, this verse uses the words na nang shanti, indicating that transcendental opulences will never be destroyed. The reason for freedom from destruction is also described. The devotees accept the Supreme Lord as the most dear personality and reciprocate with Him in different relationships. They accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as their dearmost friend, the dearmost relative, and the dearmost son, the dearmost preceptor, the dearmost well-wisher, or the dearmost deity. The Lord is eternal, and therefore any relationship in which we accept Him is also eternal. It is clearly confirmed herein that the relationships cannot be destroyed, and therefore the opulences of those relationships are never destroyed. Every living entity has the propensity to love someone. We can see that if someone has no object of love, he generally directs his love to a pet animal like a cat or a dog. Thus, the eternal propensity for love in all living entities is always searching for a place to reside. From this verse, we can learn that we can love the Supreme Personality of Godhead as our dearmost object, as a friend, as a son, as a preceptor, or as a well-wisher. And there will be no cheating and no end to such love. We shall eternally enjoy the relationship with the Supreme Lord in different aspects. A special feature of this verse is the acceptance of the Supreme Lord as the Supreme Preceptor. Bhagavad Gita was spoken directly by the Supreme Lord, and Arjuna accepted Krishna as Guru or spiritual master. Similarly, we should accept only Krishna as the Supreme Spiritual Master. Krishna, of course, means Krishna and his confidential devotees. Krishna is not alone. When we speak of Krishna, Krishna means Krishna in his name, in his form, in his qualities, in his abode, and his associates. Krishna is never alone, for the devotees of Krishna are not impersonalists. For example, a king is always associated with his secretary, his commander, his servant, and so much paraphernalia. As soon as we accept Krishna and his associates as our preceptors, no ill effects can destroy our knowledge. In this material world, The knowledge which we acquire may change because of the influence of time, but nevertheless the conclusions received from the Bhagavad Gita directly from the speeches of the Supreme Lord Krishna can never change. There is no use of interpreting Bhagavad Gita. It is eternal. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, should be accepted as one's best friend. He will never cheat. He will always give his friendly advice and friendly protection to the devotee. If Krishna is accepted as a son, he will never die. Here we have a very loving son or child, but the father and mother, or those who are affectionate towards him, always hope, may my son not die. But Krishna actually never will die. Therefore, those who accept Krishna, the Supreme Lord, as their son will never be bereft of their son. In many instances, devotees have accepted the deity as a son. In Bengal, there are many such instances, and even after the death of a devotee, the deity performs the Shraddha ceremony for the father. The relationship is never destroyed. People are accustomed to worship different forms of demigods, but in the Bhagavad Gita, such a mentality is condemned. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to worship only the Supreme Personality of Godhead in its different forms, such as Lakshmi Narayan, Sitaram, and Radha Krishna. Thus, one will never be cheated. By worshipping the demigods, one may elevate himself to the higher planets. But during the dissolution of the material world, the deity and the abode of the deity will be destroyed. But one who worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead is promoted to the Vaikuntha planets, where there is no influence of time, destruction, or annihilation. The conclusion is that the time influence cannot act upon devotees who have accepted the Supreme Personality of Godhead as everything. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Ajnanatimmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna. So with your permission, all the senior Vaishnavas here and all of you, I try to share something on Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is a very beautiful verse, and here what we're learning about is that whatever a devotee invests in is always eternal. There's a beautiful verse in the Niti Shastra that one who gives up the eternal
for the temporary loses everything. And one who gives up the temporary for the eternal loses nothing. Perhaps we could summarize the whole point of this purport with that one statement. That if you sacrifice the eternal, your spiritual eternal benefit for temporary enjoyment, then the net result is you lose everything. Because you lose the eternal benefit, and the temporary benefits that you're going to accrue are going to go anyway. So if you give up the eternal for the temporary, then you end up losing everything. But if you give up the temporary enjoyments of this world for the eternal, then you lose nothing. Because you gain the eternal, and the temporary which you seemingly miss out on anyway was going to go anyway. So you lose nothing. And in this sense, the spiritual teachers are always encouraging us, invest in your eternal assets. We put so much time, energy and effort. We put so much blood, sweat and tears into investing in that which we are going to lose. Here, we're hearing in the Bhagavatam that this is not a wise way to invest one's time. This kind of argument was the basic argument that Blaise Pascal used to try to establish why people should spend their time worshipping God. Blaise Pascal was an interesting personality. He was a kind of like a Christian apologist, and he lived in a time which was highly skeptical. And so he was racking his brains, how do I encourage people that, worshipping God is a beneficial thing, something that they really should take seriously. So he came up with something called Pascal's wager, which is perhaps the most kind of interesting, you could say in one sense, pragmatic argument for believing in God. And many of you are familiar with this because even Srila Prabhupada, he kind of talked in this language. Blaise Pascal basically said there are two ways you can go in your life. One way is that you theoretically accept that God exists and you pursue it. And he said the other option is that you deny it and you ignore it. He said, you see, if you go down the path of denying and ignoring it, if it turns out that God didn't exist, then you haven't gained anything and you haven't lost anything. Because anyway, it was all meaningless and temporary, and if everything's matter, nothing matters. He said, but if you go down the path of denying God and it ends up that God does exist, then eternal loss. He says, if you go down now the other path that you believe that God does exist, then if it ends up that God didn't exist, then no loss, no gain, because if everything's matter, nothing matters. But if you go down that path and it turns out that God did exist, then eternal gain. So he said, if you're a betting person, just on the pure basis of odds, you may as well believe in God, because you have everything to gain and nothing to lose. And therefore, if life was a gamble, and if you were having to place a bet, which is actually the reality, because life is a gamble, we only have a certain amount of time, and life is a bet, because we have to put our money on something. He said, therefore, my advice to you is, believe in God. Because it pragmatically makes more sense. So he presented this argument in a book called Pensies. He says this is the best argument I feel I have given to stem the tide of atheism. So it's interesting, when the devotees presented Pascal's wager to Srila Prabhupada, you can read in Dialectic Spiritualism, Prabhupada kind of agrees with it. He says, yes, it's true. This is a good proposal that we should. Just on the basis of odds, you have everything to gain and nothing to lose. And And in his writings, Pascal uses further examples to say why this is a good thing. Like he, for example, gives the argument that if you were traveling somewhere and someone phoned you and said your house is on fire with your family inside of it, then he said it's a 50-50 chance. It may be true or it may be a hoax. But obviously you're going to spend your time and energy and effort to find out whether it's true or not, because you've got everything to gain and nothing to lose. But if you ignore it, then you're definitely going to lose. So it's very interesting. He gives another argument of if someone's got a terminal disease. So if someone's got a terminal disease and then the doctor comes to them and says, here's a medicine, but it's 50-50. It may work or it may not work. He said, obviously you're going to take it because you have everything to gain and nothing to lose. So, as you know, the Bhagavatam says, Nasav rishir yasya matam na bhinnam. You can't be a rishi or a philosopher unless you have a different opinion. So there were many other philosophers who came to Pascal and started arguing that, no, this is not a very good argument. And they gave different kind of responses. And one of the main responses was that they were explaining the opposition that no, this is not a good argument, because Pascal's making out like if you worship God, you have nothing to lose, but you do have a lot to lose. Because you have to give up things to be religious. You have to give up your time, your energy, you have to give up material enjoyment, you have to make a sacrifice, and giving up a lot of things here. And he said, his response to that, which again Srila Prabhupada also said, his response to that was, no, actually we're not giving up anything. Because religious people, spiritual people, people who live with a higher ethical compass, even in terms of happiness in the world, they experience more happiness. They have better health, physical health, mental health. They generally have better relationships. They generally pursue values which bring higher types of satisfaction and contentment in their life. They have higher morality. They're less likely to engage in things which are going to be harmful to them. And so even on a material level, they have better lives. So it's an interesting thing. One time someone came and said to Srila Prabhupada, you're morning to evening, Krishna, Krishna, everything. You wake up, you sing Krishna, you read Krishna, you tell everyone about Krishna, you do Krishna's work. It's just like Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. And at the end, what if there ain't no Krishna? And Prabhupada said, do it anyway, because it's the happiest life. It's just beautiful. So, the eternal assets, the higher dimension that Srila Prabhupada is explaining in the purport is that Krishna and the opulence we get from serving Krishna will never be lost. Because as soon as we serve Krishna, we become situated in the spiritual atmosphere. Jivan mukta sa uchyate ihayasya harer dasya karmana manasagira nikala shvipyavastasu jivan mukta sa uchyate. That when one becomes a Haridas, and they engage their karmana, their activities, their manasa, their mind, their gira, their words, in the service of the Supreme Lord, then they become jivan mukta, liberated, even while living. So devotee is actually already living in the spiritual sphere. And in the spiritual sphere, there's no influence of time. Of course, sometimes people ask this question, how can you say there's no time in the spiritual world? Of course there's time, because Krishna has Astakaliya Leela. There's night time, and there's morning time, and there's lunch time, and there are different time frames in the spiritual world. So how can you say the spiritual realm has no time? But here Srila Prabhupada clarifies in the purport that the idea that the spiritual world is timeless is the idea that time has no destructive effect in the spiritual world. And that destructive effect, Kalo Shmi Lokakrit Pravriddho, Krishna says, time I am the destroyer of all the worlds. That time element is absent. The time element functions in this world is very, very scientific. Why does Krishna function as the time element in this world to take everything away? Because it's Krishna's way of showing us everything we're not. You're not your possessions, therefore Krishna will take it away. You're not your positions or your titles, therefore Krishna will take it away. You're not your body, therefore Krishna will take it away. You're not defined by your relationships, therefore Krishna will break all of those relationships. The time element functions in the material world to take away everything we're not, to help us understand everything that we actually are in essence, in eternity. And so here, Srila Prabhupada very beautifully in the purport says the devotees, their opulences are never lost. Whatever you invest in as a devotee, you never lose that. Of course, there is one thing that the devotees feel a great loss about. Most things in life, the devotees don't feel any loss because they don't lose anything here. Their assets are eternal. But there is one thing the devotees lose that causes them great agony and anxiety. What is that?
To lose the association of
to lose the association of devotees. Yeah. This is painful. It's so painful that Narottam says, I am smashing my head again on the rock, again and again. Because when I lose the association of devotees, that kind of separation, that being bereft, all the world feels vacant. I think once His Holiness Gauragovinda Maharaj said in the lecture, he said, you have to cry for Krishna, you have to cry. If you chant and you cry for Krishna, then Krishna will hear you, but somehow you have to learn how to cry for Krishna. And then he said, and if you can't cry for Krishna, then what will happen is one day your spiritual master will leave, and then you'll cry for your spiritual master. But somehow you have to cry. So it's a very interesting point he made that even sometimes crying for Krishna is very difficult. But we cry for the Vaishnavas. They are very much in our life. They are very much closer to us. And in that sense, sometimes we feel more moved by the disappearance of a Vaishnav because it is immediately apparent in our own life. And so today we're remembering the disappearance of Haridas Thakur and how that was very, very painful. Of course, Haridas Thakur prayed to the Supreme Lord Krishna that you have to let me leave before you. Because if you leave before me, it will be too shocking, it will be too difficult, it will be too unbearable. And therefore Haridas Thakur prayed to the Supreme Lord that please give me this one last benediction in my life that I can leave in your presence. I want to leave before you leave. So Haridas Thakur is very interesting here in this verse. We're talking about how a devotee never loses their opulences no matter what. A devotee has many opulences. One is their faith, another one is their enthusiasm, another one is their complete focus and determination to serve Krishna. Haridas Thakur never lost any of these. There's a moment every morning whenever I'm in a Mangalarti where I look at the deities and I just pray to Krishna that Krishna, never let me lose my enthusiasm. The moment you lose your enthusiasm, your desire, your determination, spiritual life dies actually. Enthusiasm and hunger and that drive to want to serve, that's what makes for a dynamic spiritual life. In fact, it's interesting, in this book written by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about his experiences in the concentration camp and the harrowing experiences that he saw around him. And there's this one line in the book where he writes, "Everything can be taken away from a man, but the last human freedom is the freedom to be enthusiastic for life." And he said, even if everything is taken away, but that remains, then everything can be recreated. But if someone has so many things, but they don't have that enthusiasm, they don't have that hunger, they don't have that desire, then he says that signifies death at that moment. Very profound point, actually. So yes, there's always this point where we come in front of the deities and we pray, never let me lose my enthusiasm, my desire, my determination. Please, Krishna, maintain this as my eternal asset. And actually, Haridas Thakur is the ideal example of this. Because if you were to think of 3 things in the world that take away a devotee's enthusiasm or take away a devotee's drive, perhaps the 3 top answers would be 1, sense gratification, the opportunity of sense gratification. Number 2 would be suffering, some reversal of the material world and some difficulty that one has to go through, pain or injustice inflicted upon them. And the third one would perhaps be sickness and difficulty that one has with their body. I was thinking about this the other day, that could there be anything apart from these 3 things that more powerfully take away one's enthusiasm and desire for devotional service? I was thinking, probably not. And the interesting thing is, if you look at Haridas Thakur's life, he faced these 3 to the superlative degree. And he never wavered. It's an incredible example. Sense gratification can divert us away from Krishna. Bhogeshwarya prashaktanam tayaparit chetasham vyavasayatmika buddhi samadona vidiyate. Krishna says, for one who is attracted or allured or distracted by bhoga, enjoyment, and aishwarya, opulence, the resolute determination doesn't take place. So sense gratification is dangerous, but Haridas Thakur, he faced a level of sense gratification opportunity that was like on the superlative degree. Maya Devi herself personified came to allure him. Well, first it said in Benapole there was a prostitute, Laksha Hira. I remember we once traveled in Bangladesh and we went to this place where Laksha Hira came to Haridas Thakur, and it was a profound moment just to sit there and chant and take shelter of the holy name and remember how she had been sent. And Haridas Thakur was so handsome, he was so effulgent, he was so attractive, that she had come there for a job, but she was like, maybe we can also enjoy, before I publicly defame you. She even got attracted. It's funny, she came to attract Haridas Thakur, but she actually got attracted by him. Anyway, we know the whole story of how Haridas Thakur told her, yes, I will do it, but finish your rounds first, and then she was converted. And then later on we know in Shantipur, when Haridas Thakur went to live with Advaita Acharya, then there it said that he was again allured by a prostitute. And this time the prostitute was actually Maya Devi personified. So it's incredible to think, who in this world, in the face of sense gratification, can remain undisturbed, who can remain focused. No, what is my eternal asset? I must focus on that. That perhaps is one way to measure one's advancement. Prabhupada writes in Krishna book, one's greatness is measured by their ability to tolerate provoking situations. And so Haridas Thakur personifies not being disturbed by sense gratification. And then later on we know Haridas Thakur was living in a cave in Fulia. And there he was arrested by the Muslim magistrate. And he was told to give up the chanting, give up all of his chanting of Krishna's names, and he refused. And then he was publicly beaten in 22 marketplaces. The reason why they used to do a public beating, because it was a double infliction of pain. It wasn't simply a physical torture, but it was also a complete defamation. It was a complete humiliation. Sometimes it depends on the person's mentality, but sometimes that can be even worse. Like even Krishna says, for a Kshatriya, defamation is worse than death. And so he went through this acute suffering of being beaten in 22 marketplaces, but never gave up. His eternal assets never gave up. So that again is another way in which we measure our advancement, when we kind of get beaten up by the material world, when we kind of get kicked around. You once, asked about, once we were having a debate in the Brahmachari ashram about football and whether you're allowed to play football or not. So everyone got the Veda base out. It was, serious theological debate, of great magnitude, the ramifications of this. So we're looking at football. Anyway, Prabhupada says this thing about football. He says, life is like a game of football, but you think you're the player, but actually you're the football. It's kind of like that, we just get kicked around, beaten, suffering by the waves of material nature. So who is that person who is able in the face of suffering to just not become frustrated, to not complain, to not feel oneself a victim? It's such a big thing in the world today. To feel oneself to be a victim, to feel oneself to be on the receiving end of injustice, to feel that sometimes we think, I did so much for Krishna, why is he not reciprocating? Why is he also not arranging for me? But Haridas Thakur never felt like that. His transcendental asset of his enthusiasm never wavered, even in suffering. It's such an incredible example. And then, yes, we hear later on Haridas Thakur went to Jagannath Puri. And there in Jagannath Puri he was, of course Haridas Thakur was, I think, about 35 years older than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore he had already become very old. Mahaprabhu, when he was in Jagannath Puri, he was already in his late 30s, early 40s. So that means Haridas Thakur must have been over 70, perhaps reaching 80. And he became very sick. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to him one day and said, you can reduce, you're sick, your body is deteriorating. Krishna is in your heart. Bhavagrahi Janardana. He understands your sincerity. He understands your intention. Therefore, you can reduce. You can reduce your rounds. You can relax your vow. You have to be practical after all. And Haridas Thakur said, no, Lord, please don't give me this instruction. I will never. My real sickness is I have no taste. I have no absorption. I want to chant. I think it's Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he commentates on this, he says this should be the determination of a devotee, that even if God himself comes to you and says, don't chant my name, you still say, no, I will chant. So that's amazing, because sickness is such an obstacle. We all, in different degrees, experience how sickness can obstruct our devotion. I was just reading in Srila Prabhupada's memories, I think, Kusha Mataji, she talks about how Prabhupada had actually handwritten that sign in the kitchen, maybe, because she said Jadurani Mataji had been serving very, maybe going above and beyond the call of duty to the extent that she had got sick. And so Kusha Mataji said there was actually a handwritten sign by Prabhupada that he had put up on the wall where he said, health first, chanting second, and then it's in service, health and chanting and then service after that. So, and Prabhupada, he writes in many letters. There's a beautiful letter where Prabhupada writes to Raya Ram Prabhu. I think it's as early as 69, and he says, I am very old, and I don't have much time left in this world, but all of you are young, and you have to carry on this Krishna consciousness movement for many decades, so please take care of your health, because I will go anyway, but all of you must remain for a long time. So Prabhupada was always encouraging the devotees to look after their health, because as soon as sickness comes in, it's very difficult. It's such an acute challenge. In the last 3 years, I saw 3 great individuals all suffer from terminal illness and pass away from this world, 3 great Vaishnavas. So I was able to walk through that final experience with all of them. And it was incredible to see. It's not a joke, like when you come to that point of that kind of level of bodily, physical pain, how to stay focused, how to stay Krishna conscious. One must be able to take shelter of Hari Katha, Hari Kirtan at that time, because all other functions stop. And so Haridas Thakur shows us how in sickness he was completely unmoved. So like this, in this verse, we're hearing that the transcendental assets of the Lord, of the devotee, are never taken away. Those eternal assets remain. And Haridas Thakur is the real example of this. In the face of the 3 most acute challenges, sense gratification, suffering, and sickness, he never wavered, because he invested in that relationship with Krishna. So yes, the daily question we can ask ourselves is, what am I doing to invest in my eternal assets? We can't take our books with us, but we can take the genuine realization that we've gained within our own heart. We can't take our beads with us, but we can take the genuine attraction that we have for chanting the holy name of Krishna. We can't take any of our possessions or titles or roles and responsibilities of this world with us, but we can take the genuine service attitude that we have within our heart. We can't take people with us, but we can take the genuine bonds of love and genuine feelings of connection with them in our heart. And so the real question is, what are we doing every day to invest in our eternal assets? Because everything else will be stripped away by material nature. But in the spiritual realm, here, Prabhupada is telling us, time has no influence. So there, if you remain situated in that dimension of reality, then everything remains eternally. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you so much. I don't know how we do with time schedules here. It's 8:37. Do I carry on for questions? Or those who have to leave and invest in your eternal assets. Okay, sure. Yes. If anyone would like to make a comment or correction or question.
Thank you.
Put the hands up if you want to have
Yeah. Oh, I have to pick? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Okay. Life is full of choices.
Thank you, Maharaj. Just before the question, a little bit, since you mentioned Srila Gauravendra Maharaj, I am a disciple of Srila Gauravendra Maharaj.
Yeah.
And one time I asked him a question about crying all the time.
Right.
And then he said, I said, many people will think we're, sahajas.
Yeah.
This is too much crying. He says, Hare Baba, he said, the Narottam Das Thakur cried, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cried, Abhinav cried, all the acharyas cried. He says, we cry for prema, but you might cry for your wife or your that's how we're crying. So, okay, the question Maharaj is in relationships, even, let's say, when devotees join and engage in devotional service, the affection is there, assuming that the devotees follow everything and they're doing everything they need to do, they still have the sentiment that maybe, and even questions that, are we going to be together?
Oh, we're going to be in the spiritual world.
So, is it that possible or also that doesn't count? Meaning like...
Yeah, so sometimes devotees have this question that we're all serving Krishna here together, and will we recognize each other in the spiritual world? I think there's a conversation where they asked Prabhupada that, and Prabhupada made that famous statement that yes, I will go, you will go, we will all go, and then we will have our ISKCON there in the spiritual world. One time I was telling the Shriti Dharma Prabhu, who was the temple president of the manor, we were talking about this, and I said, Prabhupada said, we're going to have ISKCON in the spiritual world. He said, great, I hope I'm not temple president there. So yeah, it seems as though, you see that, but you see, we're looking from this perspective up. But here, Srila Prabhupada is making the point that the spiritual world is a timeless place. So these are inconceivable points, because what the ramification of that is that when you go back to the spiritual world, it's as though you never left. So we're kind of thinking we'll be up there and we'll be remembering everything down here, but it's kind of like this is just a flash in eternity, and then when we go there, it's just like you immediately, seamlessly re-enter the eternal present of the spiritual world with Krishna, as though you had never left. It was just like, oh, you're here. So yeah, we will, of course. All these relationships are eternal, and the spiritual world is the realm of unlimited possibilities, so anything can happen. But yes, we must, and just on your point of crying, yes. Some people may think it's sahaja. I think His Holiness Gauravendra Maharaj used to also say, not crocodile tears. Crocodile tears means the tears, superficial tears, or the tears of the emotion. But what we're talking about is Atma Krandan. That means the cry of the soul. There's a verse actually. Bhakti yoga, bhakti yoga, bhakti yoga dhan. Bhakti e Krishna namir smarana krandan. That if you want to, my friend, my brother, my sister, if you want to attain bhakti, then you have to remember Krishna crying from the heart. So we can say there are different types of crying. There is the cry of the samsarika, someone who's just caught up in all the things of this world. They're crying for the things of this world. I lost this, I lost that, I didn't get this, I didn't get that, this person said that, that thing happened to me, crying, crying, crying. Madhvacharya says if you add up all the tears of the conditioned soul that they've shed for lifetimes, it would be enough to fill an ocean. So there's the cry of the samsarika, but then higher than that is the cry of the sadhaka. Prabhupada says when you chant Hare Krishna, you should cry as though a A baby is crying for the mother. And then beyond that, there's the cry of the Siddha, the eternal resident who's always in the spiritual realm, crying, desperate, running after Krishna. Hey, hey Radhe, Vrajadevike, Lalite, hey Nanda Suno Kuta. Krishna, where are you? Radha, where are you? Running, running. So these are different qualities of tears. The tears of the samsarika, the tears of the sadhaka, and the tears of the siddha. So we have to transform, because everyone will cry. There's no question, you have to cry. Everyone will cry. It just depends what we're going to cry for. That's the point. Yes. Yeah, Raja.
Balance and keep our focus on intensifying our devotional activities or going deeper in chanting and reading and not get caught up in ambitious pursuits of career or relationships, etc.
So we're living in the material world, and there's a tendency, and not just a tendency, sometimes a necessity also to improve material situations, whether it be career or whether it be finance or property, whatever it may be. And how can we make sure that in the course of investing in that material advancement, we don't become diverted, we don't lose our orientation of what's really important? That's why we must always remain awake to the spiritual reality. The morning program is not just a part of the routine. The morning program is an opportunity to again reorientate us as to what we're eternally and ultimately aiming for. When one has deep sadhana, when one is connected and one is constantly remembering their ultimate goal, their ultimate aspiration, then what happens is that they remain awake to that reality even while kind of living in this world. Once the Janak was glorified as a great king, even in the Bhagavad Gita as a great saintly king. And so the sages once came to Janak and they said, "You're so glorified, like we can't understand, like how do you remember all this material stuff, do all your duties, and still you're famed as such a great spiritualist? How do you do it?" And he said, "Come back at lunchtime and I'll give you the answer." So they came back at lunchtime. He said, "Please take prasad." So they all sat in rows. And just when they were about to serve out the meal, all of the sages looked above them, and there were swords hanging on a thin piece of string above each one of them. They were like, they looked at Janak, he was like, "Don't worry, it's part of the decor." You know, like, this is like a little bit uncomfortable, you know, like we're trying to take prasadam here and there's like a sword on a thin piece of string hanging above us. He said, "Hey, well, you already said I'm a great person. Why I will put you in any danger? You just take prasad, you don't worry." So they took prasad. And then at the end of the meal, he rounded them up and he said, "Yeah, satisfied?" He said, "Yeah, we ate." "Digested?" "Yes." "You took prasad, no problem, right?" He said, "Yes." "What were you thinking of while you were taking prasad?" We got those swords. We couldn't think of anything else. And he said, in the same way I do my duties, I digest all my different responsibilities, but I'm always awake. I'm always remembering what the ultimate reality is. So there's no substitute for one's own depth. There's no magic formula. The only formula is that we have to have become captivated by Krishna's name, fame, form, qualities and pastimes. And as we're captivated, it doesn't matter what we're doing, where we are, whatever efforts we have to put in the material world, because we know that is what I'm ultimately searching for. When Rupa Goswami wanted to leave, then Mahaprabhu sent him a cryptic message. Pada vyasinini nari vyagrapi griha karmashu tadeva svadayatyantar navasanga rasayanam. Rupa Goswami wanted to leave everything. Mahaprabhu sent him a cryptic message. Just as a married lady who has another lover, what does she do? She stays at home and she does all her duties even more attentively so that nobody will assume or presume or have any suspicion of anything else. But all the while she is remembering her lover. So that's the point, that we have to actually become captivated by the possibility of going back to the spiritual world. And then what happens is, when that becomes our the preoccupation in our mind, our connection with Krishna, then whatever we're doing in this world will always orientate it towards that end. But when it's weak, therefore sometimes, young people come to me and they say, I want to make it really big for Krishna. I want to be the best in my career, and then I'm going to offer it to Krishna. So I'm like, great idea. Just make sure on the journey there you don't lose the plot. Because what profiteth a man who gains the whole world but loses his soul? So we just have to make sure that we always are orientated. And that there's no formula for that. It's a determination. It's a inspiration within one's own heart. One's heart. Sorry for not giving something more practical on that. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Saying that once everything in our life is gone, the one thing that can't be taken away is our enthusiasm for life. I'm just wondering, what is that life that's left that you're enthusiastic about?
Sometimes we have to go to places where people experience a bereavement, someone they've lost in their life. And the message that I share with them is that life will never be the same. But life can still be beautiful. When someone loses someone else in this world, there's no point trying to convince them that it's okay, philosophically no, it has changed. Life is never going to be the same. But life can still be beautiful. So the enthusiasm for life comes from knowing that where I am doesn't define who I am. The enthusiasm from life comes from knowing that Krishna has bestowed within me the opportunity of free will by which I can make choices to always orientate myself towards my deepest aspiration. The enthusiasm for life comes from knowing that at any point I have the power to say, this is not how the story is going to end. But when one loses that enthusiasm, then one loses the very opportunity to utilize that one thing which can get them out of jail. And so we're more powerful than we think. We're more powerful than we think, because we have the power of making a choice. And when we make the right choice, Krishna can reciprocate unlimitedly. And when there is Krishna and the devotee, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara Tatra Shrir Vijayo Bhutir Dhruvanitir Matir Mama. The very final verse of the Bhagavad Gita tells us, Yatra Krishna, wherever there is Krishna and wherever there is the devotee, Tatra, in that place, there will always be Shri, opulence, Vijay, victory, Dhruva, Nitir, Matir, and extraordinary morality and progression. So that's where the enthusiasm comes from. You know, it's like for some years of my life I did traveling Sankirtan, and one realization I definitely got, amongst other things, was that if you just stay on the street, no matter how terrible a day it is, if you just somehow stay out there, something always happens by the end of the day. That was my firm conviction after I don't know how many other realizations I had, but that conviction I definitely had, that if you just stay on the street, it's like sometimes there's that, you know, there's like, you get out on the street, you're distributing books, and you're just like, oh my God, I should just pack this up now. This ain't going nowhere. Like, I'm just hitting a wall here. And my conviction was always that if you just stay out there, if you stay in the game, you got to be in it to win it, as they say. If you just stay in the game, Krishna always sends something by the end of the day. I can't remember one day on book distribution where I didn't come away without some rewarding experience. I just can't remember a day like that, no matter how difficult it was. So I kind of thinking that's perhaps the story of life. Book distribution is interesting because it's almost like a microcosm of life. You can learn. It's like I call it sometimes the school of life. Like for example, His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu says, like, learn to take a no in style on book distribution. Like, have you got time? No. Are you interested? No. Do you have any money? No. Are you happy? No. Just no. And he's like, you have to take a no in style. Like, okay, have a great day, no problem. Don't let it deflate you. Just carry on. And then later on I thought, my God, this is not just the art of book distribution, this is the art of life. Like, Krishna, I want to do this. No. Krishna, I hope this will work out. No. Krishna, but that person. No. And then we just get more and more like, no. Just get more and more deflated. But when you take a no in style and say, oh no, okay, no, Krishna's got a bigger yes. Okay, let's go. Let's see what Krishna's got in store. So easier said than done. So therefore, enthusiasm, always. Life will never be the same, but life can still be beautiful. Thank you. All right. I think we'll end there. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.